Hello everyone, Shinto Bean here playing some more Warhammer combat cards, and let me introduce the newest trait to be added to the game, and it is Anti-Infantry. It functions the same way as Big Game Hunter. Indeed, a lot of cards that used to have Big Game Hunter now have Anti-Infantry instead, but it just increases the damage of the card's attacks against enemies with the Infantry keyword, which you can find on the back of the card. Now, if you're wondering how many infantry cards there are in the game, currently there are about 360 infantry cards, and that's out of like 750 some cards total, so nearly half of the cards in the game are infantry, including quite a few warlords as well. So, while it is possible to face a deck that doesn't have any infantry, most likely you will be seeing some infantry in nearly every deck. So, a total of 42 cards in the game had their traits switched to the anti-infantry keyword. So let's start with Eldari. Two warlords now have anti-infantry. First of all, Rikarth, he still has Medicate as his main trait, so he actually unlocks anti-infantry at level 9, so he'll be able to do a bit more damage with that melee attack of his. Lilith Hesperax, on the other hand, got her main trait changed to anti-infantry. It used to be outflank, so now she will be able to hit quite hard, although of course as the warlord you don't have as much control over what is in the opposite lane, so if you're playing against Lilith, of course you can just try to avoid putting infantry in front of her. As for the bodyguards, we got a total of 7 bodyguards that got the trait. The first one is definitely the weakest one. The Drukhari Rak Akathist, this one used to have regeneration. Pretty useless card in my opinion. And it has such a weak ranged attack that anti-infantry really isn't going to make much of a difference at all, unless they drastically increase the stats of this card, which we'll see if they do at the end of the season. Then we got the Drukhari Hellion. This one used to have melee scout, which was quite useful on a card, low-cost card like this, but still I didn't really use the card very much, so kind of on the edge of whether or not I would actually use this now. The Succubus used to have Furious Charge, and it now has anti-infantry. It's going to be dealing nearly 100 damage at the level I have it, which is pretty good. But of course on these lower cost cards they don't have enough health to stay on the field for too long. Then we got the Warlock Skyrunner. This one used to have Psychic Link, so now with all 3 of its attack types it will be dealing a little bit more damage. We got the Harlequin Shadowseer. The main trait on this one is still shields, but its secondary trait is anti-infantry instead of outflank, is what it was. The Razorwing Jetfighter also used to have outflank for its main trait, now has anti-infantry, so yeah, this will be dealing well over 100 damage at this level. It's not a card that I used ever before, but I'd like to try it out and see how it works. And of course, if you're running it with either of the ranged warlords, it's going to be even more impactful. And then finally for Eldar, we got the Kabbalite Heavy Gunner, this new card that I don't own. I think it used to have Precision Shot. Alright, Necrons and Tau. Neither of these factions have any anti-infantry, which is too bad because both of these factions, it would have been nice to have additional traits because they don't have Psychers. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see if they release any new traits for these factions. Servants of the Emperor have a total of 9 bodyguards that now have the trait. So we got the Ruststalker. This one used to have Deathblow, which was a pretty bad... It's just a pretty bad card. I'm sorry, but like the melee attack is so low on this one that neither Deathblow nor anti-infantry is going to make much of a difference. Sly Marbo has anti-infantry for his secondary trait instead of outflank, so I mean he has pretty low damage output, so it's not too impactful. Then we got the Calidus Assassin. Used to have Big Game Hunter, now has anti-infantry, so just sort of changes the role that she plays. And same goes for a few of these other cards. Kyria Draxus also used to have Big Game Hunter, as did the Cataphron Breacher. The Eversword Assassin, this is an interesting one. It used to have Deathblow for its secondary trait, which was a very powerful combo with Berserk. So yeah, anti-infantry could potentially still be quite good after it's gotten its attack boosted by Berserk, so it's an interesting choice there. Inquisitor Koteaz, this guy also used to have Big Game Hunter for his secondary trait, which combos really nicely with Sonic Blast. Anti-infantry is also going to be quite effective as the secondary. Then we got the Sidonian Dragoon. This one used to have Melee Scout. It's not really a card that I use very much, but it will punch a lot harder against infantry. And then the Hellhound. This is an interesting one. It used to have Ranged Scout, which is normally not like the most efficient trait to have on an expensive card like this, but this one you're most likely going to be running it with Commissar Yarrick, who can buff your ranged attack anyway. So the Hellhound can now just deal some extreme damage to infantry cards. Then Space Marines, we got 3 Warlords and 7 Bodyguards. First up is Watch Captain Artemis, who used to have Big Game Hunter. Honestly, I'm not really sure which one is better. He does retain Deadshot as his secondary trait, though. Helbrecht used to have Furious Charge, and now that has been replaced by Anti-Infantry, so with Inspiring Presence he could deal a pretty extreme amount of damage to infantry. And then Azrael also has Inspiring Presence and Anti-Infantry. Then for the bodyguards, we got the Deathwatch Black Shield. This guy used to have Furious Charge. We got the Sternguard Veteran Sergeant. This guy used to have Big Game Hunter. Now Anti-Infantry, just a change of roles. We got this Infiltrator Lieutenant. He used to have Outflank. We got the Black Templars Primaris Castellan. This one was another sort of mediocre card. It was a Berserker. Castellan Crow. This is an interesting one, but as an epic, he doesn't unlock the secondary anti-infantry trait until level 9, which I haven't gotten him up to yet. I think he used to have Psychic Link for the secondary. We got this legendary Space Marine guy who used to have both Furious Charge and Precision Shot, which is a funny combo, but now has anti-infantry instead of Precision Shot. And then finally this guy, which I don't own, he used to have Barrage, I think. Moving on to Chaos, we got some interesting changes here to the 6 bodyguards. So the Aspiring Sorcerer used to have Psychic Link, now he has Anti-Infantry. Not really sure which one is better. The Death Guard Lord of Virulence, this is actually a really big buff, I think, to this guy. He used to have Poison for his main trait, which Poison is just in general not a very strong trait, but now at the level I have him, he's going to be dealing over 80 damage with both ranged and melee against infantry cards. And you'll see a number of other Nurgle cards in here. We got the Bloat Drone as well, getting anti-infantry. And then the Demon Prince of Nurgle, instead of Fear, now has anti-infantry, so giving a little bit more of a punch to some of these Nurgle cards. Fabius Bile also has anti-infantry, which is actually a very big improvement as well. He used to have Poison for the secondary trait, but I run this guy with Abaddon. My turn 1 Abaddon deck is quite strong, and this will make Fabius Bile even stronger, because of course this is going to boost his buffed attacks to even greater amounts. So he's actually going to be hitting very hard against infantry. And then finally, Zarok the Wicked, this Terminator Sorcerer who never used before because he had the weak trait of Warp Surge, now has anti-infantry with all 3 attack types. It might be interesting to try him out now. For Orcs, we've got some questionable changes, I think. They're losing some of their key defensive traits on some of the cheap cards. Like this 13-point guy used to have Taunt, and then the Meganob used to be like one of the cheapest cards with Shield, so a very tanky card, which now has anti-infantry, but its attack stats are fairly low, so it's not really that great of a match, I don't think. Then Mad Dog Grotsnik for his secondary trait has anti-infantry, which I haven't unlocked yet. Not too incredibly impactful. And then new card here, this guy used to have Death Blow, now has anti-infantry instead. Moving on to Tyranids, we've got some pretty important changes here, I think. The Venom Thrope used to have Poison, so now has anti-infantry, which I think is much better, especially if you're running this guy with Gosar. So, like, at this level, he's going to be dealing almost 100 damage to infantry right off the bat, but after a couple turns with Gosar, he's going to be hitting much harder. Toxicrane is another one. He used to have Death Blow, which was just not a very good fit with this card, which has a lot of health, but now it's going to be dealing a lot more damage, especially with Gosar. The Sanctus, this one used to have Poison for its primary trait and Precision Shot for its secondary. It now has anti-infantry for its main trait, making it very much a glass cannon. And Poison for the secondary is kind of questionable, I guess. Like, again, lore-wise it makes sense, but very weak for a secondary trait. And then last but certainly not least, we've got the Moloch, which used to have Death Blow, another mismatch of a trait because it has so much health that the Death Blow almost never goes off. Now with anti-infantry, this thing will be dealing almost 200 damage to infantry, and so definitely a big improvement on this one. And Leagues of Votann also do not have any cards with anti-infantry. So that is all the cards. Looking forward to seeing how they do in battle. Some obviously are better than others. But let me know what you think of these changes and of the new trait. I think I'll be doing some videos showcasing it in action. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.